Ever sweat the small stuff or be caught by surprise when a small personal challenge arises that you weren't prepared to face? We're going to briefly talk about those questions today as I share a little dream testimony of my husband's. I'm Lynmarie, by the way, and I've helped dreamers around the globe since a couple of decades ago. I think I'm describing a lot of life when I speak of being caught by surprise or sweating the small stuff. These scenarios seem to happen all the time. Now, a lot of times, I get warning dreams of upcoming things that I'll be encountering. So they're no surprise, and I can prepare for them. But not always. Sometimes God speaks into a current situation right while it's happening, a situation I didn't anticipate. And sometimes God speaks after it's happened. And then there are situations that God doesn't seem to speak at all. A lot to sort out. He has his reasons, for sure, and I trust that. But today, I want to emphasize that God is willing and able to speak into our smallest issues, even the really everyday stuff, with or without the surprise element. It's said that God is powerful enough to handle our biggest concerns, but loving enough to care about our smallest concerns. And by the way, the baby elephant on the cover depicts God's concern with our baby issues. Well, nothing could really begin to picture God himself, and certainly not a wild animal. But I had to choose something, and elephants in dreams generally represent massive and unusual wisdom and or a great impact or issue. That's pretty relevant because when we look to God for answers, great or small, we're looking to massive and unusual wisdom. I like to place hearing from God into 4 topical categories. 1, our smallest personal concerns. 2, our significant personal concerns. 3, our upcoming personal surprises. And 4, community, national, or global issues. With respect to our significant personal concerns, I doubt there's anyone watching who doesn't have at least one personal concern right now. And you want to hear from God on that. So don't be shy about praying for the Holy Spirit to speak into it. And after you receive a dream, journal it somehow so you can decode the hidden message and receive that requested help. My dictionary and courses, by the way, are a helpful resource for interpreting those dreams. With that, I just want to share a dream which I would say falls under the category our smallest personal concerns. It's a pretty short dream and a great example of how God can help us through prophetic dreams to correctly manage our smallest situations. Here goes. My husband's sinuses had been acting up for over a year, and he finally got them scanned to find out that several surgical procedures could potentially restore them to functioning properly. But it would involve at least a couple of weeks of recovery, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to endure that. About that time, he shared a dream with me, something about a job. Actually, I should use this example as an example of God's humor, because it's a pretty silly sounding dream. But in the dream, there was a remote control car doing circles between 2 buildings. And it was his job to assist the remote control car in exiting the courtyard through the narrow opening where the 2 buildings came closer together. That was it. That was the dream. Generally speaking, I knew that the remote control car symbolized something automatically and continuously going around in circles, right? A continuous cycle. And the buildings represented two solid structures or barriers of some kind. In reality, he was looking for a new income stream at the time. So I thought, of course, it had to do with that. And I attempted to try to connect our general interpretation of the dream to that situation, to the things he was looking into or the jobs he was considering applying for. But in pondering that, the bottom line of the dream seemed to say, do you really want to continually do that as a job? Imagine it. It would be like working an assembly line. Very respectable, but also very monotonous. Well, after a few days, the Holy Spirit, out of the blue, suggested I apply the dream to a different situation. Rather than the income or job hunt, his sinuses. Okay, let's go with that, I thought. And here's what it looked like. There were allergens and apparently pathogens circling around in his sinuses, causing trouble actually as they festered. That was a fact. They just milled around there inside his head because the pathway out was so narrow. Suddenly, the dream came clear. His job in the dream depicted the need to assist this remote-controlled car going around in his head to make its way through the narrow opening, right? So in real life, his job was to blow his nose constantly to get as much of that stuff out of there as possible. God was saying, you already have a job. Do you really want to keep the job of blowing your nose like 50 times a day? Get the dang surgery. I mean, you get it, there was a blockage here. And the stuff is just going around and he's blowing his nose, seriously. And God said, do it. I believe that's what the dream was. And I shared this little testimony to impress on you that God really cares about our everyday situations. He can speak into these. And he speaks in many ways. It doesn't have to be dreams, but you've got to admit these dreams, riddled with the need for decoding, are fascinating and pretty accurate. Anyway, the testimony of God's kindness in speaking into these somewhat small situations doesn't stop there. I had a similar situation come up not long after his, and I think it's even more fascinating. I'll share that next time. I've even got a title already, and it has to do with pickles. Till then, breathe freely, don't sweat the small stuff, and be blessed and live beyond your wildest dreams.